morning, there is new outrage over how BP has handled the Gulf oil disaster. A man who supervised oil cleanup workers in Mississippi is in jail, charged with raping another employee. Now, a CNN investigation uncovers his criminal history and raises questions about whether this incident could have been prevented by doing a simple background check. Special Investigations Unit correspondent Abby Boudreau goes looking for answers from BP and the company who hired him.
One of the thousands of cleanup workers who descended on the Gulf Coast was this man, Rundy Charles Robertson. He was in charge of numerous workers on this now deserted Mississippi beach. The problem was all of these people who were coming to town were strangers, and the residents here had no idea who they were or where they were coming from. And apparently they had good reason to be concerned. Robertson was a convicted sex offender, and he was breaking the law by not telling local law enforcement where he was living.
I don't understand how they could have had a man like that as our supervisor.
Do you think what happened to you could have been prevented?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. And that's what makes me a lot of times so angry.
Well, this woman came to this town because she was looking for work. She wanted to help clean up the beaches, and she needed a job. She has 4 young children, and it was important for her to get hired right away, and that's exactly what happened. Rundy Robertson was her supervisor, and she told us time and time again, I trusted him because he was my boss. I respected him. He was the person who was put in charge of me. You just weren't feeling well that day, and he offered to drive you home.
Yeah.
And you thought he was a nice enough person to make that offer, I guess.
Yeah, he was my boss. I thought it was all right.
She says Robertson asked to use her bathroom, and when he came out, she says he raped her. She's represented by attorney Adam Miller.
I find it unbelievable because BP and their subcontractors had relationships with all local law enforcement. They had the opportunity and the ability to clearly check all of these people that they were hiring and bringing in to ensure the safety of the public.
If anyone had checked Robertson's background, they would have found a lengthy criminal history, and he was still on probation for a felony. Instead, he was made a supervisor. We are in Pascagoula, Mississippi, here to talk to the local sheriff. Several weeks before this incident, Sheriff Mike Bird says he met with BP's local head of security about why BP was not doing background checks on beach cleanup workers.
I asked him directly, I said, are y'all doing criminal histories and background checks on these people? And his reply was, no, we're not. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. He said, there's so many of them, we were told to do drug screens, and that was it. And I said, well, that's not good at all.
But you actually recommended that they get criminal background checks on their employees.
Yes, we did, and I told them that we would do that for them. We would do the background checks for them, and they said no.
Robertson worked for a company called Aerotech that hired workers to remove oil from the beaches. You'll come out and talk to us?
I'll come out and talk to you. Give me literally a couple more minutes, okay?
So I'm not going to shut the door and then never see you again?
I promise I'll come back.
Okay, he promises. So we waited. But they only slipped us a note through the door referring us to the corporate headquarters. Did you realize you were hiring people who are registered sex offenders?
Thank you, ma'am.
This is when the blame game begins. First, we spoke with the general counsel for Aerotech by phone, who says Aerotech wasn't the one who decided not to do background checks. Quote, we are not liable for anything that happens. Once we deliver the people to be supervised by our client, we don't have anything to do with them anymore. Miller Environmental Group, which oversaw the cleanup and hired Aerotech, did not return our phone calls. Then BP, which was paying for the beach cleanups, told us in a statement it normally checks its own employees, but, quote, this was not done for all contractors in this response. The responsibility lies with the employing company for their own staff. The requirement on subcontractors to BP's contractors is one further step beyond BP's scope of control.
The buck ultimately stops with BP. It was their site.
Robertson was arrested, and he was then charged with sexual battery and failure to register as a sex offender. He tells police that the sex was consensual, but now he's being held on more than a $500,000 bond, and he's sitting in jail.
Yes, he's in jail, but you got a victim here. What she's going to live through the rest of her life. It's just going to be pure hell for her. That's what it's going to be.
And it could have been prevented.
And it could have been prevented in my professional opinion.
And you warn them.
Yes, ma'am.
How does something like this just change everything for you?
I go through anxiety, you know, I'm angry, I feel dirty, scared. I'm scared.
The victim did not go to police right away because she was afraid she would lose her job, and she couldn't afford to let that happen. So she took a couple of days off work, and about a month after the incident, she says she was laid off. Aerotech says she was one of many workers who were no longer needed to clean up the beaches, and it had nothing to do with what happened to her. But Tony, she says to me, why did I even bother going down to the beaches to try to clean them up? Why did I even try to get a job like this? She says it destroyed her life. It just was not worth it.
Yeah, you can see how that's the case. Aerotech, I love the statement. It's like, wouldn't we all love to have blanket immunity in our lives? We're not responsible for anything.
That happens.
Yeah.
Anything that happens.
A lot of other towns involved in this cleanup. What about those other towns? Were they checking the background of their new hires?
We were able to contact quite a few police departments. Grand Isle in Louisiana, they were checking the background of the employees that came in. And they said they did find 3 sex offenders, and they were hired. It wasn't the case that, oh, they're a sex offender, they can't be hired. But they supervised them, and they said they didn't have any problem. Of course, the sheriff that we talked to says, well, too bad we couldn't have done that here.
Yeah, well, we'll offer to do the background checks and you don't have to pay. Well, come on, let's
Yes,
get
you're
that done.
exactly right. He said we would have done it for free.
We would have done it for free.
So this was not a cost-saving issue.
Abby, appreciate it.
Not that that should have mattered.
Not that that should have mattered. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks.
A CNN